How do you tell a story without using words? You might look to film or art for the answer to this question, but what about a medium with no visuals? How can a song tell us the story without using words? Part 1. Title, art, and descriptions. Saying that instrumental music has no words or no visuals is a bit of a lie. Even if the song itself has no words or lyrics, at the very least, it's going to have a title. That alone is going to give us some hint to what the artist envisioned when writing it, and the title is just the first of the tools that the artist has to provide us with the song's context. If you're looking at a song at SoundCloud, there's not going to be just a title. It's going to be the track art, the tags, the description, the URL, or links to external sites, the comments, the playlists, even the artist picture, cover, and description. If the person making it was actually fucking insane, they could probably utilize the shape of the track's waveform in some way. All of these things can give the listener some context of what the music is about, and however loose it may be, it can provide a visual or an idea to imagine while listening to the song. For example, let's take a look at one of my songs. Sakuraburst, cherry blossoms explode across the dying horizon. Take a look at this long-ass fucking song title. It's pretty much a story in of itself. Alongside this, there's both the album artwork, which emphasizes the idea of flowers blooming, and the tag, Distorted Horizons. If you listen to the song without knowing the title, the art, or the general concept, what would you hear in it? You'd hear a song which shifts between orchestral sections and broken, distorted, and heavy sections. You'd feel a sense of progression through the initial build-up, the first drop in a minor key, it falls back down again into the bridge, and then it gathers the balls to kick itself back up into action, building up again, then bursting into a second, heavy, triumphant drop with a change to a major key, and then settling down afterwards again with a sense of peace and serenity. You can kind of get a loose idea of the story from these things, but with the added context of the title and the art, the story becomes a lot more defined and would become even more so with any extra details like the tags in their description. So that being said, what if I had wanted Cherry Blossoms to have been a lot more explicit in its setting and story, just so you could pick those things up through the music alone? How would you go about establishing the ideas and setting of the story more clearly using only sound? Part 2. Choosing sounds to provide context. Creating setting for your sound choice is, in theory, pretty easy to do. You want your song to evoke forests? You add a bird. You want your song to sound like it's been playing live? Add some crowd sounds. You want a song about the ocean? Add some moist. But what if your idea is more complex than a simple, vague, generic setting like these? How would you choose sounds to tell a story by themselves? I'm going to refer to this concept as environmental sound selection from here on out. 7 AM by Tennyson is the best example I can think of to explain this concept. In this song, Tennyson convey the feeling of waking up early in the morning, and they do this mainly with their sound selection. Just through the sounds they use and the way the dynamics and music flow, I can imagine the entire setting and story of the song. It goes like this. Someone wakes up to the beeping of their alarm clock, presumably at 7 AM. The music comes in softly and slowly as they wake, and then it picks up as they get up and make themselves a nice breakfast. The snares are cereal crunches, the sounds of drinks pouring, of them yawning, or getting shushed for eating too fucking loud. The music gets a bit quieter now as they sneak past someone still asleep on their right side, possibly their dad, and then the song picks up again at the end just as they're ready to begin the day. All of this is communicated really well with the environmental sound selection. This works alongside the song title and the structure and the dynamics of the song to provide your imagination with all the information it needs to create an entire little story about what's happening while you're listening to it. Instead of using something super vague like placing one recording of a forest in the background, they use a lot of smaller, more micro samples, which are all related, and when taken together, they add up to create a very fleshed out environment for the song to take place in. Part 3. Sampling. Sampling, as defined by our friend Wikipedia, is the act of taking a portion or sample of one sound recording and reusing it as an instrument or sound recording in a different song or piece. Now, this is just a practical definition. Sampling can also have a very important effect emotionally. This is because, as well as just sampling the clip of music, you're also sampling the ideas of any story, setting, and atmosphere the original recording had, and tying those into your own work. What you're doing is, via sampling, calling back to stories already told and infusing them into your own. For an example of this, let's take a look at another one of my songs, Forest of the Spirits. This song samples a lot from the Studio Ghibli film Princess Mononoke. Sounds like ambient noise with the forest, the sounds of the forest creatures the kodamas make, as well as samples from the soundtrack, ranging from strings, harps and flutes to drum loops to entire excerpts of battle music. All these samples tied together and help evoke the atmosphere the movie was providing. By doing this, Forest of the Spirits now has a story you can associate with it, the story of Princess Mononoke. Now, this might not seem like the best way to tell your own original narrative in a song, but with Forest of the Spirits that isn't what I was aiming for. How about using a sample to pull a small part of a story from somewhere to function as a micro piece of a larger, macro narrative being told through a song, or in this next case, album? Mega by blank blank by blank by blank bam. Mega by Blank Boy is stacked full of samples from many different sources, some I recognise and some that I don't. One sample I do recognise is the use of One Fateful Night from the Earthbound soundtrack and a third song, Frozen Flame. In Earthbound, this track plays as you're lying in bed, you hear the sounds of a meteorite crashing to Earth, so you get up to go and investigate it. So how does this tie into Blank Banshee? Mega is an album with a short story running alongside it. It involves a meteorite, a girl with a beige green knife, a giant fucking mech, and a dude going to space in a rocket. To me, the album Mega is a loose soundtrack to this story. You hear an explosion, you open your eyes, it's still dark. Did I dream that, or really just hear that? You open your window. Immediately you see something illuminated in the ground. For a second you think it might just be one of those LED construction lights, but there was no construction going on today. You glance at the clock, 4:21 AM. You throw on some clothes and go outside. From up close you can tell that it's an impact crater. A small rock sits in the center. This section of the story pretty much mirrors the opening to Earthbound, so even if you haven't read the short story of Mega, if you hear that sample and can associate it with its source, you already have a pretty close vision of the story in your head. This sample also doubles up as environmental sound selection, providing an ambience in the background of the song. This is a way in which sampling can pull narrative from other sources and enhance the narrative of your own story, your own song, your own album.
What will I gonna do? Will I gonna do a different one? Once upon a time, there was a ghost, and his name was Charlie.
Part 4. Spoken word. Now, does the inclusion of small clips of dialogue, singing, or poetry stop a song from being classed as an instrumental? Wikipedia is kind of on the fence about this, but in my opinion, no it doesn't. Sampling dialogue is one of the most direct and effective ways to convey layers of story in your song. Let's take a listen to Count to 10 by Amit. The song opens with a recording of a child telling a ghost story, which immediately sets a tone of creepiness, working in tandem with the instrumental, which is cinematic, deep, and ethereal. There's also another unintelligible vocal sample here, as the quiet, screechy sounds of bowed cymbals, matches being lit, and the sounds of fire in the background add to the atmosphere and setting here too. The use of vocal samples in the song is both setting up the story of the song, possibly the album, and also creating a setting for the song, like I said in part 2. The fact that both the vocal samples are clearly recordings from an old tape, and you can hear someone pressing play and stop on them adds to the feel that they're in the world of the song. Another example of environmental sound selection. What I imagine while listening to this song is someone sat in a dark candlelit office listening to the evidence tapes of a haunting, and either reminiscing or trying to figure out what's going on with them, and getting a little creeped out by them. Part 5. Context from other songs on an album. Okay, so I've talked about sampling, vocal clips, creating setting through sound selection, and how track names, art, and other media can enhance the narrative of a song. Last thing I'm going to talk about here is how the story of other songs on an album can give an instrumental song on the album meaning, or vice versa. One example of this is the song Black by the M Machine. Track 5 on the album Metropolis Part 1. This song is given meaning by the songs preceding it. I'm aware that there's a story by the M Machine to go alongside the album, similar to Mega, but I haven't read it. So the following analysis is based purely on the music and not the story. I might be wrong in my interpretation of the album story, but this is what I imagine while listening to it. Tracks 1 through 4 follow the story of explorers searching for the sunken city of Metropolis, finding it, then discovering it's inhabited. They then meet with the king, who's a little bit of an asshole, and then they settle down to live there, but feeling a bit uncomfortable because of the differences in the people and the culture. That brings us to track 5, Black. This song to me is pretty clearly the music to a battle fought using big-ass robots or weapons, possibly the giant M on the cover art. We can tell this mainly by the fact that the first 30 seconds of the song consists of the sound of machinery powering up. Then the song launches into the heaviest part of the album, a lot more intense than anything we've heard previously. Now the point of this is that if the song were taken on its own, we could still know that it's a song about big robots fighting, but the fact that the other songs and the story they provide precede it, we're giving a lot more context and weight behind the song. It's like the difference between seeing one clip on YouTube of a battle between monsters and humans fighting to defend a castle, and then seeing the entirety of Lord of the Rings. Knowing the context and the emotional weight of the Battle of Helm's Deep makes the scene a lot more important, impressive, and meaningful. Back to the M Machine, I'm not exactly too sure what causes the war in Black to happen, but I can guess that it might be due to the unrest of the immigration from the explorers, maybe them questioning the rule of the egotistical king. But again, if this song was taken apart from the album, we couldn't even begin to guess this shit because of the lack of story context provided by the other songs on the album. Part 6, the end. Okay, so Pretty much everything I've talked about in this video is subjective, and it's easy to ignore all this and interpret whatever you want from any of the examples I've shown. These are just my interpretations of the songs, and they'll likely be different to both what you imagine while listening to them and the authorial intent of the artist. These were just some techniques an artist might use to convey stories through their music, either by creating a setting and atmosphere through their sound choice, sampling other media and pulling association of story through them, or how the mood of an instrumental track can enhance another story being told in an album, or vice versa. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm planning on making a lot more analytical videos like this. I've got a big list of videos I want to make. I'll also be going back to just making music production videos, just me fucking with sounds and showing you how I made some projects. If you want to support me, there's my Patreon link in the description. I give out lots of sample packs and different things out on there. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you soon.